gradual process. In grade school, we would have a visiting art teacher, like probably once a week, I can't recall now, or she would come into the class and would do art. And I always enjoyed that. And then when I would take the finished art home, my parents were very excited to see what I was doing. And that continued through grade school. And then it started to build up where my parents started to make sure that I had art supplies available to me or my sister. And so I could work on my own out of that school situation. And that was the beginning. That just grew and grew. And eventually I moved into wanting to try paint on a canvas. I used paper for years though, inks, watercolors, and eventually started to use acrylics and also oils, which I did not care for, but the acrylics I really loved. And this was a long time ago, so acrylics were fairly new. But it was just a gradual process that just kept growing and growing and growing. And that led me, by the time I was in junior high and early high school, I was well on my way at that point, because I was having a hell of a good time discovering and exploring what I could do. That's a great question, because yes to a lot of that. I was born in Connecticut and moved to California when I was 5. My parents were both creative people. My mother was a theater person. She and her family, when she was a child, had their own radio show. My uncles were songwriters and musicians. On my father's side, he was a writer for many, many years. That was his vocation. He wrote scripts for radio dramas, and he was the editor of the Newtown Bee in Connecticut when I was born. There were always creative people around the house. Newtown at that time was like a getaway town for New York people. It was very close to New York City. And there were always theater people coming by and this and that. So it was they lived that life. They had that life going. In the move to California, and as I aged, and especially my father saw what I was doing, he liked to see the freedom I had to learn myself of what I wanted to do. And he worked in a college setting in California. He was a public relations director for this group of colleges. A lot of art people involved in the group of colleges. He saw a lot of students follow in the footsteps, or try to, of their art professors, and lose their own path. And I think the folks were concerned, if this was going to be a choice for me, that I would do much better finding my own way. So art school wasn't really ever brought up. I mean, we talked about it, but I had those instinctual feelings anyway, that I couldn't imagine someone else telling me how to do what I was finding out on my own, to steer me in a direction they thought I should go. So I never regretted that decision. I was on my own from day one. And my parents were very encouraging from day one with that. And I knew it was, I really didn't know what was in store for me, but I was comfortable with that sense of mystery. I had no expectations. I was just creating an awful lot, you know, and finding out what was working and what wasn't. A lot of artists in my really young days were deep inspirations and real shocks to me. My folks had my father really had a nice little collection of art books, and I was looking at those when I was very young. And actually the first book that just knocked my socks off when I was a kid was called One Morning in Maine by Robert McCloskey. It's a simple story, but the drawings in the book were so wonderful. He just used like a blue pencil and did these magnificent drawings, and I was really quite thunderstruck by that. And then as I aged, I was looking at works, the Surrealists and the Renaissance painters, the Impressionists. There was an opportunity for me with my father's books to see a lot of that whenever I wanted to. But I look at other people's art with some frequency. I mean, even on Facebook, I get a lot of art stuff that pops up. And I always enjoy looking at it, but in all honesty, most of it is inconsequential to me. I enjoy seeing it, but I'm so focused on and needing to work with my own that I don't take much of it to heart. You know, it's good to see, but again, it's inconsequential to me. I've got many friends and acquaintances who are artists, and it's the same thing. I enjoy seeing their progress and how they're doing and all of that, and that's very meaningful to me. But in the end, it's inconsequential to when I approach a canvas. Only on the murals. I worked with some great people on some of the murals we did, and that was always very enjoyable. But that has been quite a while now since we've done any of that type of work, and I don't see going back to that. No, I don't see that, and collaborations don't really interest me. I am a very I'm a soloist, you know. I am in my studio. I'm basically a monk, you know, in his little cell painting, and that's where I'm most comfortable. I work whenever I want, just because my studio is always in the house where Jan and I are living, and we've moved around a bit and lived in many places, but there's always a studio at home because I love to be around the work 24 hours a day. Doesn't mean I'm working 24 hours a day, but I can pop in for 2 minutes, 3 seconds. I can, spend 8 hours. I can do whatever I want with it, and that's very important to me. I can look at my work at night when I'm brushing my teeth just to get ready for the next day. It's just this sense of having it. There's no separation between my life and my art. It's just this one big fabric. I walk into the studio and turn on the classical station from out of San Francisco, KDFC. Now, I listen to that. Sometimes the music drives me nuts, so I'll switch over to an old iPad I have with Pandora, and I have a selection. Sometimes that drives me nuts. Sometimes I want to hear people sing. Sometimes I just need the music from the classical station, and it's very helpful. It puts a wonderful wind in the studio, a gentle breeze of music, and I find that very conducive to work. Although there are times when I just need pure silence, but I would say 80% of the time I'm listening to the classical station. That way, and I like that because I don't have to figure out what I want to hear. I just listen to what comes on, and I'll turn it off if it's mind-numbingly horrible. But yeah, it's always been important to me, that part of the daily process. I work all the time at just getting better at what I do. Other things do sneak in that I would. Sometimes I'll see something that I wish I could produce. Maybe I've seen some other artists' work, but then I realize, that's not me. But within my own language, my own visual art language, I think I've still got many, many miles left of exploration. The trick is to let myself go and take those images into those new directions. I feel real comfortable with the imagery I have now, but I also I'm not done with it by any stretch. I would like to do I have done some really large paintings in the past. Some of my imagery I would like to see really large, and I would hope that maybe comes to fruition at some point. But within my own language, I still have a lot to do. I just have to find my way, to that point. My paintings are fair size, I think. I like the power of a visual. I am entranced by a big sky or whatever it might be, the big ocean. I would. So that's always lurking out there, that I would like to expand on what I have, but really do it when I'm ready for it. Do it well, and like I try to do with all the work. There's several things I'm trying to achieve on each canvas, and that's a sense of balance. I desperately need balance. I think because I've always worked without a safety net. It's and the only way to stay from falling off is to keep balanced. And whether it's the placement of leaves or the content of the imagery, balance and a sense of purpose in the painting. There has to be something in the piece that says a little something to me, and I hope it, and I don't know what that is, but I hope it extends to other people. And sometimes it just does not work. I have spent untold hours on paintings that I've had to destroy because they get so internally and externally heavy on me that they've lost all their value. but I'm looking for a simple, a lightness, because life can be really heavy. I need the lightness, but I also understand that life is incredibly fragile, and a lot of people in this world go through life not experiencing any sense of fulfillment or even lightness. They have heavy, constant lives. I mean, that's a big part of the human condition. I'm trying to find these paths for myself, and I hope others that give me what I'm searching for. It's been the way it is now for quite a while, but I went through a whole lot of experimentation, and at some point years ago, I don't know how long, I realized that the pieces I was working on were where I wanted to be, and I didn't foresee necessarily changing anything, just expanding on what I have, like we talked about briefly earlier. In my younger days, I was trying to find my way, so I was very susceptible to the works of others and to see what I might do along those lines, just as a way to start off on a different path, or what it was like to work that way. But gradually everything sort of boiled down to where I am now, but this was a long time ago. So I've been basically in this way for quite a while. I don't see any big changes at all coming. And as we said, it's using this language, which I love, and the imagery, and just taking that and making the recipe maybe bigger, and imagery cycles through, and sometimes short cycles, sometimes great big cycles, but it's always comfortable. I love it when something cycles around again, and sometimes my paintings that I did years ago, or little ideas I jotted down, make real good sense to me now. And sometimes a painting that I did many years ago could be revisited, but in a different time frame. The images aren't set in stone, like the boats made of leaves and stuff. I'm sort of sensing a new era of those coming up. Maybe that's a good way to put it. And the other images that I've come up with over the years, the cloud bowls, I start to get a sense of it's like remaking a film or something. It can be done very well, and why not if it's it's material that I've created, and so that's part of that expansion too, of using my language and using the same letters but making new words out of it. Reworking is interesting because I never know how a painting is going to finish up. I really don't know. So every time I'm working on the piece, basically I'm reworking it to get it to work. Reworking is vital to me, and sometimes a lot of the times it's very minor. Sometimes I need to shift something just a wee bit. There have been some paintings that I've done right off the starting block that proceeded and finished without adjustment of any kind. But they're rare. They're rare because I'm I'm choreographing as I go with the balance and all the imagery. And sometimes it just doesn't work. In fact, just this past week on Monday, I had 4 paintings that I had been working on for a while, and it dawned on me that they were going nowhere. And there's no way at that point I could do anything with them. I didn't want to. I was finding that I was going to bed at night worrying about how to deal with these paintings, these 4 paintings. So I cut them all off their stretcher bars and cut them into small pieces and threw them away. At which point this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I just felt fantastic. And that's what has happened in the past. I give it all I can, and when I get to the point where I know I can't go any further, I have to do that. But it's rare, but it's necessary when it happens. There are a lot of times I have finished a piece, and it takes a while for it to settle in with me that it is done, because I'll always want to fits and fuss, but most of the time when I'm done with a painting, I realize it and it's finished and I can sign it. There have been a few times when I've sent paintings off and I'm not sure about them. Sometimes I've called paintings back from galleries and gotten rid of them, just because I send these out there into the world as my contribution, and I have a real sense of wanting it to be what I really wanted it to be. And so that, if I don't, that produces more sleepless nights. So, but that's been very seldom. So the studio, it's when they leave the studio, they're ready to go, and I know the chances of ever seeing them again really can be small, because they can head off and lead their own lives from then on. So I want them prepared for that. Finances, without a doubt. It's always been touch and go. There's never been a safety net of a job with a weekly paycheck. In my early days, after high school, I left home right after high school and started traveling. I had a wanderlust that was just incurable, and I felt real confined after. At the end of high school, I just needed to be on the road. So I traveled tremendously, as easily as I could, which was hitchhiking and standby flights to wherever. I would find money by doing odd jobs here and there, whatever it took. And I was painting whenever I could during those times. There were several occasions when I would settle someplace for a while, and my folks would send my art supplies to me. So I was always mindful of the pursuit. But finances throughout all those years and well into my adulthood was always a struggle. I was in galleries of all kinds, and that grew over the years to a much more stable situation. But the other challenge is I was always looking and observing and enjoying situations that I was taking in visuals. I was a very visual person. I still am. I loved visuals. For several seasons, I worked a carnival in Oregon and California, which was a fantastic visual experience. You know, I was 18, 19 in that age. And I would get paid, you know, pittance for a lot of work, but the experiences were just fantastic. And I was fine. I didn't have any worries about my process at that point. I knew it was a growing process, but finding money was always a pain. And I just did whatever I could to do that, hoping that as I kept going, it would work itself out at some point in my life. Well, I started in Claremont, the town I'm from. There were several opportunities for galleries, just small startup galleries that people had, and I showed in there. I don't remember their names. I don't even remember if I sold anything. And wherever I could exhibit a painting or two, I would do. And that, as I moved on, well, I was in and out of Claremont a lot because I kept coming back to check in on my two little sisters. I have an older sister and myself. We're 2 years apart. Then go back 9 years, there's another sister, and then 5 years beyond that back, there's another sister. So my older sister and I, we both were doing different things, but we always came back a lot to check in on our sisters because home life was not the best. So I'd stay around Claremont for a while, and there might be an opportunity to show some work somewhere, or I could settle down for a little bit and do some more paintings. So it was, you know, it's all sort of it's not a fog. It's hard to put any kind of a time frame onto what I was doing when. Because it was all spontaneous, whatever needed to be done at the time. And it wasn't, Jan and I, my wife and I, who is also from Claremont, I met her on one of my trips home, and we became a couple many years ago. But we settled in Claremont, so because it was easy. She had 2 children, and that was just what we did. So we were around Claremont, back in Claremont for quite a while, and the opportunity came up to do mural work, and I sold more paintings, just basically to people I know who wanted paintings. But in the early 90s, Jan and I left Claremont and moved to the Bay Area. And that's when things really started to happen with a much more solid gallery life. So I was able to, I went through a couple hellish gallery situations because of galleries going bankrupt and owing me money and this and that. I always kept at it. And eventually it turned into a very viable thing, and I was getting a lot more notice. So it was easier to become a financially eased artist, I guess. You know, I could count more on art income than being a house painter or any of the other crap I had to do. Not that there's anything wrong with painting houses, but I would rather have been painting my own work. But I had to juggle between all that. I have no idea what I would do if I weren't painting. Although I would hope at this stage in my life that wonderment of the painting would easier lead into something else that I could do. And I don't know why I wouldn't be painting unless I was, physically incapable of it. I'm always in some odd form or another telling stories that I don't know the beginning or ending to with the canvases. I think I could probably create some other sense of what I do on the canvas in another form, but I don't know what that would be. That's a hard question. I might not have any, except in so much of my artistic life, the least favorite was dealing with crappy galleries. A bad gallery can cause you lots of pain, and there are lots of just bad, stupid galleries out there, and I've had my share of them. That probably is it, because a good gallery is instrumental in the sense of well-being of the work and a caring of the work. So over the years, probably that's the least favorite. I mean, I got through all the financial crap, and that was almost to be expected. With bad galleries, you're dealing with a bunch of the unknown that's harder to control. If I needed money, I could always go do something, But when your work is in a bad gallery, that's tough. And I love and cherish the relationships I have now with galleries, because it's a remarkable partnership to me, and I don't want to do their job. I don't want to be a salesperson for my own work. The favorite parts are many, and they're just this sense of I have found something in life that I feel of my own doing that I feel is a contribution to this weary old world, and that's important to me. I want to. I don't care about anything such as legacy or this and that. I just want my time here to be well spent, and I think I've got a sense that I've done that on quite a few levels, and that's sort of a continuing inspiration, and again, it's a continuing mystery, but a very comfortable mystery for the future. Just moving ahead each day is a friggin' mystery, but with the situation I'm in now, it's a mystery I cherish. An undying perseverance and an undying sense that I was on the right path, even though it was hard to tell. I don't think I lost faith. I had some years of downtime, not downtime, but years of wondering what the hell was going on. But always that perseverance was there, that there was something there worth hanging on to and moving ahead through it all. I think that's what helped me tremendously, because I wouldn't give up. Even when the galleries that owed me money would go bankrupt. I mean, geez, money that was a king's ransom at that time, to me and Jan and the life we had, and to have it pulled out from under me after my hard work. Those were tough times. But from from the first one that happened, no, it was the second one. That led to I kept at it, and that event led to a much better situation that changed everything for me. So I was being rewarded for my perseverance, which was very important. I kept getting those little rewards here and there, you know, a little niblet that said keep going, you know, and those were very, very important. So advice, wow, you know, I wouldn't mind sitting down and talking to someone, but the advice would come from that conversation, because there's no any cut and dry. It's like, here's a list of 7 things you need to do to become a successful artist. What the hell is that? I see those on Facebook sometimes. Here's what I suggest. And, fuck. God, it's the communication between who's asking the question and me. And if I say, look, I'm not the person to ask, then I would say that, because it's just too wacky. It's a blender of crap out there, and you know, there's not one set of rules for everyone.